Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome back to the workshop. Now today I'm going to experiment with trying to part off on my mini lathe. Now most of you will know that I haven't had a mini lathe very long. I am very much a novice, and whilst you might wonder why a novice would be talking about parting off when they clearly don't have much experience or skill in the matter, it's because I want to document how as a novice I've gone about it and how I've been successful in doing that when at first it seemed like an impossible task. Let's get tinkering. Parting off on a lathe is a particularly difficult operation. The parting tool isn't a single point cutting tool. It cuts across a surface and therefore it puts the lathe under quite a lot of strain. So this is a good test of its abilities. Well, this looks quite promising at the moment. But this is deceiving. As I try to move the tool towards the workpiece, the carriage is moving away from the work. I'm not sure why it does this, but my mini lathe comes with a carriage lock, so I need to engage that. Not the easiest thing to do when you're reaching around a camera. With the carriage lock in place, I try again. It seems to start well, as only a small part of the tool is engaged and it flattens the taper that I'd inadvertently created by not using the carriage lock. I then feel the lathe is struggling, so start applying cutting fluid. The tool bites down and stalls the lathe, so I hit the emergency stop button. After backing out, I add some WD-40 and try again, but the tool isn't cutting, just rubbing. This isn't working. I try again, applying more and more force to the cross slide, but nothing is happening. Eventually the tool catches and stalls the lathe again. So I'm wondering if my tool is at the right height. So I've added a blue mark to the side top edge of the tool just to make it a little bit easier to see. And the little point you can see is from the tailstock live center. If I move the tool in, I think pretty close to the center, but I think it's slightly under. So I'm just going to raise it slightly with some shim stock, which are old feeler gauges. Actually, they're new feeler gauges. So these feeler gauges come in 0.8 of a millimetre right down to 0.015 of a millimetre, which is definitely thinner than tin foil that you get in your kitchen. And they're just bolted together, so they're quite easy to make into shim stock. So I found it really useful using the feeler gauges because they've got numbers on, so you can just go slightly up or slightly down and try and judge it exactly right. And I think I do now have it perfect. I'll zoom in on this. So that should eliminate tool height as the problem. Another thing I need to do is just make sure that the tool is completely square with the face of the piece. So I loosen the tool post, move the tool towards the face so that it pushes the tool completely perpendicular with the face. I then tighten up the tool post. Another thing I've been told is to not have the tool overhanging the cross slide because that puts pressure on the cross slide gibs, creating movement because it creates a lot of leverage. So by moving the tool so that it's over the cross slide should reduce that possibility of leverage and flex. Now I've set the camera up like this so hopefully I can see while I'm videoing it if there's any flex, and hopefully that'll help me identify what the problem is if I haven't solved it, which I suspect I probably haven't. I've got the speed set to 100. I'm trying to constantly lubricate and keep the pressure the same. So this lathe has a 1000-watt brushless motor, which should make it pretty powerful, but you can see that tool pressure I'm putting on is so much that it's stopping the lathe. And I think part of the problem might be solved if I could get it into its lower gear by changing the pulleys. Unfortunately, although I can see that there's an adjustment for changing the pulleys and there looks to be like some sort of lock nut, I can't actually get to that lock nut to unscrew it to loosen those pulleys off. I've looked in the manual already and there's nothing in the manual about changing from low speed to high speed. So I'm going to have to do some research online, see if I can work out how to actually change this nut that I don't seem to be able to get to. So there's one more thing I can try. I've moved the tool in the tool holder back a little bit, or back as much as I can, so that it's as rigid as possible and it's got as little flex and as little leverage as possible, to see if that makes a difference. I'm guessing I moved it about 1/4 of an inch back, maybe 1/3 of an inch. Moving the tool backwards should reduce the leverage of the tool on the compound and cross slides when pressure is applied. But this still doesn't appear to work. The tool is barely cutting, and when the pressure on the tip gets too much, it stalls the motor again. I've tightened the gibs on the compound slide. We'll see if that works. This is starting to make a difference. You can see chips being made, but there's still quite a lot of rubbing rather than cutting. I try turning up the speed, which is probably not a good idea. It may not be obvious from the video, but it's cutting really slowly. At this rate it will take about 30 minutes to cut through, so I don't think this is the solution either. Now it's possible it's the tool itself, so I've also bought this Carbide bit tool, and we'll see how this works. And my understanding is these require even more pressure, so I'm not expecting much from this, but we'll give it a go. It was quite cheap. This tool is working better. There is still quite a lot of rubbing sounds, but when enough pressure is applied, the sound changes and it starts cutting. It's then down to technique to keep that pressure applied. Well, that worked remarkably well, but the tool isn't long enough to actually part this piece of metal. Now the Carbide tool is about 2/3 the thickness of the high-speed steel tool, so I'm going to see if I can just remove what the Carbide tool didn't remove and see if by only cutting that small amount now the high-speed tool can actually get all the way through it. Well, it cut this piece off all right. It feels quite smooth actually, I'm quite surprised. Makes for quite a nice thin washer, but it has left this nub here, which I don't really understand. So I've never tried grinding a tool bit before, but I've tried to make this parting tool, which doesn't work very well, thinner. So let's see if that works. It's now about the same thickness as the Carbide tool. The chips are breaking quite nicely now, but I still need to work on my technique to keep the tool engaged at the right pressure. So this surface is nice and clean and very smooth. This surface is pretty smooth as well, but it's cupped. I'm not sure if that's something to do with the parting tool or if it's to do with the metal and it heating on one side and bending. I'm not sure. It's a very, very thin piece, as you can see. It's well under 1 millimetre, but I'm really pleased with that. It looks like I now, with either the Carbide tool, which worked really well, or this new high-speed tool, which I've just made the same thickness as the Carbide tool, do seem to be now being able to part off. So grinding this thinner across here has definitely made a difference. Bit too close to the teeth of the chuck. It's a bit of a mistake. What I'm going to do is loosen the chuck and then pull the work out. Now, with a couple of successes behind me, I start to work on my technique. I think I can boil this down to speed control, which I do with my left hand, but mainly tool pressure, or you might call it feed rate, with the right hand. I have to stop feeding the tool into the work occasionally to add lubricant, but overall parting off this aluminium rod has gone from impossible to achievable, even for me as a complete novice. This piece is very clean on this side, which is the side parallel. It's a bit better on this side now, and it's less cupped. I altered the profile slightly of the tool. I thought it might have been rubbing, and probably still is rubbing slightly. I might just try and alter it a little bit more, see if I can improve it. And now with a little more practice, I can get nice chips. I'm reasonably confident that the tool and the lathe can part off aluminium okay. Any failings are now my technique, which can be improved with practice. So I think it's time for me to up my game and try parting off with some steel rod. Okay, I finally had success. This is the last one I cut. It was cutting really easily. In fact, I was struggling to move the cross side in fast enough to get past that vibratey bit that I'm getting. And once I get past that and it digs in, I was struggling to turn the thing at a fast enough speed. You can see I've got a very nice finish on this side, and I've got a very nice finish on this side. A little nub there which I need to get rid of, but the finish is very nice. So I think I'm getting to a better shape. All I've been doing, I think the sides of the tool that I ground were slightly rubbing on the sides. So I might try buying one of those thin parting blades that you can get. Obviously I need to get a holder for it for my 4-way tool post as well. But this is very nice, and it's flat. It hasn't bowed now either. So I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so this is a test on a steel rod. Up to now I've been using aluminium rod. It takes me a little while to get the tool pressure correct, but I successfully part off this piece of steel on my first attempt using my modified high-speed steel tool. So this is a piece of steel rod. You saw it how it cut. I think the noises and things you're hearing have got more to do with my experience and skill level than the lathe. You can see that it's cut that incredibly well. I'm very pleased with the cut that's left. The other side was the non-faced off end of the rod. Hopefully you can see that is incredibly smooth. One parting operation certainly doesn't make me an expert, so I try again. Practice makes perfect. You can see there are points when I'm not getting the lathe speed right. Too fast and the tool rubs, too little pressure and the tool rubs. When I get these just right, the tool cuts really well. So here it's this piece, it's the second piece of cutting steel with the high-speed steel tool that I reground, and one side is very nice, the other side isn't so good. This is the side that was left on the stock. Now interestingly, the side that was left on the stock is the side that I didn't grind, so perhaps if I grind that side I might be able to improve it slightly. So I've just tweaked the grind on this cut to see if I can improve the quality of the cut on the piece of stock that's left in the jaws after I've parted off. Yes, a little bit better. I think it's got as much to do with my technique as it has the actual cutting. This side actually feels much better than the side I cut off now, so I don't know exactly what's going on. This one's definitely the best so far. This is with the carbide tip. Well, that broke the tip, but it didn't break the lathe. Well, that about wraps up this video. The things I've learnt by going through this exercise of working out how to part stuff on my mini lathe would be to lock down anything that can move, to reduce any leverage by keeping the tool short and making sure the tool is over the cross slide, to use high-speed steel tools rather than carbide tools because those tools are sharper, so they require less pressure to actually work, and to minimise the width of the tool to as narrow as you feel safe to do. And I set mine to 2mm, and that seemed to work very well. Now, these conclusions may not be safe. I am a complete novice, but I do hope that if you're looking at this and you're a complete novice and you're struggling to part off, then seeing how a beginner like myself has achieved it may well give you the tips or the inspiration to go out there and achieve it yourself. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe and a share. They all help this channel a lot. And if you want to see a video of me doing an initial review of my lathe, then you can see it here. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.